Chapter 4 The World Below. Ethan sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the vacant spot where Claire had once slept. The sheets still held the faintest trace of her scent, lavender and warmth. A fragrance so achingly familiar it made his chest tighten. He reached out, running his fingers over the fabric, as if somehow, just somehow, she would reappear. But she wouldn't. She was gone, and so was Emily. A hollow silence filled the house, a stark contrast to life that once thrived there. No soft humming from Claire as she prepared breakfast, no giggles from Emily as she bounced down the hallway, only the quiet, punctuated by the occasional creak of the walls or the distant wail of sirens outside. Ethan exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand down his face. The world had changed in an instant, and he was on the wrong side of change. The news anchors had been scrambling for answers since the disappearances had begun. A mass event, they called it, a global crisis. Theories were flying, government experiments, alien abductions, a spontaneous genetic mutation that had somehow caused certain people to simply vanish. But deep down, he knew. Claire had been right. The rapture had happened, and he had been left behind. A sound from the hallway made him turn. Daniel? His son stood in the doorway, jaw clenched, fist tight, eyes rimmed with red. "This is a joke," Daniel said, his voice hoarse from shouting, or maybe from crying. Ethan wasn't sure which. Ethan swallowed the lump in his throat. "I don't think it is." Daniel's eyes flashed. Anger, fear, grief. "Then why are we still here?" His voice cracked. "Why didn't we go too?" Ethan had no answer. Or maybe he did, but he wasn't ready to say it out loud. Because if Claire had been right, then his faith had been a lie. And if his faith had been a lie, he had failed. Failed Claire, failed Emily, and failed Daniel. A sharp pounding at the front door jolted them both. Daniel stiffened. "Who is that?" Ethan stood quickly. "I don't know." Peering through the peephole, he saw a man in uniform, black tactical gear, a stern expression, an emblem stitched into his sleeve. A golden phoenix encircled by stars. His stomach dropped. The Global Unification Initiative. Ethan took a slow breath and opened the door. "Mr. Matthews?" The man's voice was professional, yet cold. Ethan nodded. "I'm Officer Graham. I've been assigned to your sector." He glanced at a tablet in his hands, swiping through information. "We are currently conducting a mandatory census of remaining citizens. Your household has 2 registered individuals. Is that correct?" Ethan hesitated. "Yes." Officer Graham nodded, typing in something. "You will be required to report to the Civic Center tomorrow morning at 0900 hours for further instruction. A curfew will be in place starting tonight. Unauthorized religious gatherings are strictly prohibited under the first global decree. Compliance is expected." Ethan's blood ran cold. Daniel took a step forward. "You're outlawing church?" Officer Graham's gaze flicked to him. "The spread of misinformation is a danger to the public stability. We must remain united at this time of crisis." He handed Ethan a small device. "This tracker will confirm your attendance tomorrow. Failure to comply will result in legal consequences." Ethan clenched his jaw. Legal consequences. The message was clear. Fall in line or suffer the consequences. Officer Graham nodded, then turned and walked away. The door clicked shut, leaving father and son standing in the cold silence of a world that no longer made sense. The first decree. Across the world, Adrian Lucero stood before a sea of cameras. His black suit was flawless, pressed to perfection, exuding power. His hair was neatly styled, his expression a perfect blend of solemnity and reassurance. Behind him, the emblem of the Global Unification Initiative hung high, the golden phoenix rising in victory. The world watched, waiting, hanging on to his every word. He stepped forward, placing both hands on the podium. His voice was smooth, commanding, dripping with promised salvation. "We are at a turning point in human history," he began. "The past 48 hours have left us shaken. We have been abandoned by those we loved. We have suffered an event unlike any before in recorded history. And in the wake of this devastation, chaos has erupted." Images flashed on the screens behind him. Riots, burning churches, looted stores, broken bodies. "This will not be tolerated," Adrian continued, his gaze sweeping across the cameras. "This is a time for order, for unity, and so, effective immediately, we are implementing the first global decree." The screen behind him changed, words in bold, stark white against black. First global decree. All religious institutions must register with the Global Unification Initiative. Unauthorized faith-based gatherings are strictly prohibited. Violators will face legal prosecution. Adrian's lips curved into something almost sympathetic. This is not about punishment. This is about ensuring stability in the face of loss. I urge you all, embrace a new world. We are stronger together. The camera zoomed in, capturing his final words as they rang across the nations. A new age has begun. The unseen realm, the battle begins. Above Earth, the air split open. Michael's sword clashed against Lucifer's blade, the impact shaking the heavens. Power rippled through the celestial battlefield, a clash of pure light against raging darkness. The armies were assembled. On one side, Michael, radiant, his golden armor blazing with divine fire. Behind him, angelic warriors stood firm, weapons glowing with celestial energy. On the other, Lucifer, his presence like a void, his wings stretched wide, dripping with the remnants of rebellion. His army of fallen ones lurked in the shadows, waiting, watching, ready to devour. Michael's gaze was fierce. "You overstep your bounds, accuser." Lucifer's smirk was razor sharp. "Do I?" He tilted his head, mock amusement dancing in his obsidian eyes. "Look below, Michael. The world is already mine." Michael followed his gaze. Earth, darkened by Adrian's decree, the people falling in line, churches were being burned, faith outlawed. Lucifer laughed, the sound dripping with malice. "They are choosing me." Michael tightened his grip on his sword. "Not all." His gaze flickered to Ethan, to Daniel, to those who were beginning to awaken. Lucifer rolled his shoulders. "It won't matter. The time of deception has begun, and soon." A pulse of dark energy radiated from him. A wave of corruption cascaded toward the earth. Michael's wings flared wide. "Not yet." He raised his sword, and the heavens exploded with light. The battle had begun. Heaven. Claire and Emily watch. Claire stood at the edge of a crystal-clear lake, its waters reflecting the golden glow of the eternal city. The air was filled with sound of harps, the rush of wings, the endless chorus of praise. But her heart was heavy. Beside her, Emily clutched her hand. "Mom," her voice was soft, uncertain. "What's happening down there?" Claire turned her eyes towards earth. The world below was dark, choked by fear. She saw Ethan and Daniel, lost, confused, afraid. She saw Adrian Lucero rising to power, his words a noose tightening around the necks of all those who still sought truth. Tears stung her eyes. "I wish I could warn them," her voice trembled. "I wish I could hold them one more time." Emily's small hand tightened around hers. "They're not alone, right?" Claire forced a small smile. "No, sweetheart, they're not alone." Then, with a deep breath, she lifted her eyes to the Lamb upon the throne, and she prayed. The war for earth had begun.